So, hello and welcome to another English video of mine. And today we're going to attempt to service this SABA VM6700. Now, below this shell is hiding a JVC GR-C1, which was the first ever VHS-C camcorder and the second ever camcorder in the form factor that we know today. Now, this is my third one of these. I have another one branded as Nordmende. I think that's a CV1500 and actually out in the open right now. I even have another one here. This is the ITT VMC 3865. The Nordmende works perfectly. The ITT also works perfectly apart from a mangled microphone cable, so there's some buzz in the audio. But generally speaking, these camcorders are very reliable. However, there's one issue that I see on these a lot of the times if they do not work, and that is that they have issues loading the tape. So let me actually demonstrate how this camcorder works real quick, and then I'll show you how to fix it. So the camcorder is now hooked up to power. I'll power it up here on the front, and then you can lay it on the side like this if you're careful. So the biggest issue with these is whenever you put it into record or playback mode, it threads the tape around the head drum. So for record mode, for example, you activate by pressing record and play at the same time, and then it will go into record pause. Now you can see this one made some noises, and now it's in record pause as indicated by all three of these LEDs lighting up. Many of these camcorders will not complete this step. They will fail at it and then return. Or they make some really unhealthy noises and barely do it on some tapes and not do it at all on others. And that is because the grease on the loading assembly is dried up. And this is a decently easy fix. Now this is not a super easy fix. Working on camcorders is usually quite difficult because they're quite packed, and you need some really fine hands in order to do this properly. So if you're a repair beginner, I don't recommend this repair. However, if you've worked on your fair share of electronic devices, this is not that hard to fix. So let me stop the tape again, and then I'll show you how to proceed with the service. Now what you need for the service is isopropyl alcohol, which this isn't exactly, but this will essentially do the same job as isopropyl alcohol. You need some grease. I use some synthetic grease here, which I found works pretty well on VCRs. However, many people will say that you should be using lithium grease. Like I said, this works fine for me. I know some other people who fix VCRs that use this exact same grease. Use this or lithium grease. If you know somebody that knows about VCRs, ask them what they recommend. But yes, you should either use lithium grease or synthetic grease, no other grease. What you also need is, of course, some screwdrivers. You need some sort of small size screwdrivers, but usually a cheap set like this will do. And then what I recommend is getting an ice cube tray, because you can use it to organize through your screws that you are taking out of the camcorder, and if you're done, throw it in a dishwasher and you can just use it for ice again. So yes. So there are some preparations that you need to do, or I recommend doing, before you work on the camcorder. What you need to do is remove the battery, disconnect it from the power supply that is not longer connected to power, like this one. Now what I recommend doing is taking off all the accessories. So for example, we have the handle, which you take off by loosening the screw and slide to the front. You can just put that aside somewhere. You can also remove the microphone on this camcorder, which not every person knows. You simply push it in and turn it counterclockwise. There's a little mark here, I don't know if you can see it, that lines up. And then you carefully wiggle and eventually it will pull out, like so. It's actually a pretty ingenious design because JVC sold some microphones for this camcorder that you could just plug into the front. So you had a mount for different microphones, and the best part is this is a standard 3.5mm jack, so if you want to use some type of other microphone, you can just plug it into there. It'll look a bit ugly, but it works. You can also remove the viewfinder on this camcorder. For that, there's a little plug down here that you need to unplug. Carefully wiggle and unplug, and then there's a push thing up here which you push down, and then you pull it off, and there's your viewfinder. Like I said, you can just put this stuff aside, and now you have the camcorder without any sort of other stuff, other annoyances. Now the camcorder, if you first take it apart, this half will come off with the buttons and the tape mechanism and everything like that. The back half does not come off up until much further disassembly, which I don't recommend doing on your own at least, because that's where it gets really complicated. So, what do you need to do to get into the camcorder? I'm trying to do this the best I can. I've read through the service manual several times, and I've opened the ITT camcorder several times as well, so hopefully I'm remembering this correctly. So up here is your accessory tube / where you put in your handle. And there's this little spring in here. It's a little metal piece. And if you look back in here, I'm not sure if I can zoom onto this. I think I should be able to do so at least somewhat decently. You can see there's a little hole here. So you take a flathead screwdriver, which I'm currently trying to assemble, and you carefully maneuver that into here. And you can't really see it that well, but I just did it. You put it in and you just carefully lift up, and then this comes out. Make sure to not lose this and put it aside safely. Then you reveal these 4 Phillips head screws. You can see right here. Then of course you need a Phillips head screwdriver, which again I'm assembling right now. Make sure that this fits, and it does. And you need to remove these 4 screws. They're essentially what holds on this top plate and the rest of the body of the camcorder all together. So remove these. They are pretty short little screws here. If you can really see that. They're pretty short little screws. And then here comes the ice cube tray. Put them in the ice cube tray. These are all from the same area and the same size, so I'm putting them all in the same ice cube. And I could probably speed this up or cut this part out, but I'll just leave this in for you to follow along. And I'm not that good at editing videos either. And there you go. Now you have your accessory shoe that came out. I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter if you put it in this way or this way, but once again I'm putting this aside into the second tray of the ice cube tray. Now there's lots of screws on the camera that we have to take out. For example, there's one up here by the microphone, which has to be loosened. And this is a slightly different screw, as you can see. So I think these are called self-tapping. I'm hoping the camera focuses on this. I have a live feed of the camera, but it's on a CRT monitor, so the resolution isn't that great. But this is a self-tapping screw, so this goes into another compartment on the ice cube tray. Now you got to turn it around, and you notice, let me zoom out again, I think I can move the camera a little bit. You can notice there's another screw right here, which once again we have to take out. And this, I believe, is also a self-tapping screw. So we can put this in the same bin in the ice cube. Then we're going to the bottom of the camera, and there's more screws here. There's 2 here, or there's 3 here, but I think we have to take out these 2. Like I said, I'm having a little hard time remembering what is where, but I have taken this camera apart before. And you can see these are now much smaller screws again, like the ones on top. So I'm putting them into the ice cube tray, into the 4th tray. And I'm doing it like a book. I have the ice cube tray like this. So here's the 1st step, the 2nd step, the 3rd step, and now this is the 4th step that we are currently working on, taking out these screws. Then we must go into the back of the camera, right here. And there's 2 more screws here that we also have to remove. If my hands weren't so shaky. And these are, once again, not self-tapping, but these are even thinner than the ones we pulled out before. So these go into a new tray in the ice cube tray. Or into a new ice cube, as I said previously. I can't even really see what I'm doing here. I should zoom out again. There you go. So now those are removed. I don't think you need to remove the one that's down here. And what you need to do next is this little piece here on the front can actually slide off. You have to slide it to the front, I believe. Or was it the rear? No. Slide it to the front and then it comes off somehow. Let me actually figure out how to do this. So I got the steps wrong a little. What we got to do now is we have removed all the screws that are holding the camcorder together. We now have to carefully lift up. And like I said, do this with as much care as you can while still applying some force. Though as the service manual of this camcorder actually mentions, never use too much force. We have to split it apart here. So I'm kind of lifting up with this hand and kind of prying with this one. I feel like I forgot one screw. This one up here almost looks like it may be one here by the iris hold. So I actually just take this out to be sure. This feels like it's still coming up. And once again I'm putting this into the next tray. But yes, it should just pull apart now. No, it's not really doing that. You kind of have to like look around the whole camcorder to see. It's like a clamshell design. Let's make sure that everything is loose. See, I pulled on the mic here now, and now this is even more loose. And now you can see we are actually starting to get into the camera. And what you need to do at some point is remove this case up here, this piece. I forgot what direction. There you go. Got to pull to the front. So there you go. That's what you got to do. And then this whole piece just lifts off. However, be very careful. There's many wires connecting this together. And the best way to now get to the components that you need to get to is to take this, move it up like this, and just set it aside like this. You don't need to take this apart any further. You're essentially ready to service it now. So what you need to do is you need to get the eject mechanism up in order to get access to the mechanism. Now, having the power supply with a cable for the camcorder is essentially what you now need to have. Otherwise it's very difficult to get the tape door up. However, I'll show you this. I'll take the camera out of the thing here. If you look right here, those are the video cables. If you look right here, here are your two battery contacts. So this is where your battery, if you have one, so that's this one, will be making the contact. And it may be possible to slide it in like this, and then it makes a contact. However, I'm not sure because the display is over there. But it really does help if you just have the power supply and can just plug it in, because you will need to eject this door, and that only works electronically. So let me turn on the power supply again. So here we are, the power supply is connected again. So we activate the power, and then we just press the eject button. Oh, that was the playback button, and it realized there was no tape inside. There you go, now it's ejected, and now we turn it off and disconnect the power, which again is very important, as the electronics on here are quite sensitive. It's a known issue on the GR-C ones that if you don't handle them quite correctly, some of the electronics will break, but if you disconnect it from power, you're about 95% safe. So let me now show you how to remove the cassette door. So there are two screws on the cassette door. There's one here and there's one on the other side at the exact same location, and you have to remove these. Now these come out relatively easily because a lot of times these were also opened already by service personnel to clean the heads, because these camcorders were pretty reliable. Back in the 80s, their number one death was just clogged up heads, which were usually easily sorted out. And you can do it without taking the whole camcorder apart. But we're already in here to re-grease everything, so I might as well clean it now when I have better access. So the two screws are now removed, and I think you slide this. Yes, you slide it towards the front, and then you can just lift the door off. And then here is your assembly, nice and free. I'll now show you what we have to clean and lube up. So here's the camera from my point of view, and this is the mechanism. And what you have to re-grease are these rails, and unfortunately they are kind of hidden in there. But you have this rail here, and then if you move away the erase head and tension thing, you can see there's the other rail. And this is what you have to re-grease. This is totally possible, but it is a pretty annoying job. I'll try to capture this as good as I can, but I'm not sure how well I'll actually be able to capture me performing this work. Now, to demonstrate this, I actually put the cassette case or the cassette holder back down, but you can somewhat see one of the rails right around there. That's one of the rails, and essentially what you want to do is here you have your Q-tip. You want to wetten the tip of your Q-tip in isopropyl alcohol, which I've now done, and then you want to just carefully wipe over, and I don't know if I can remake this be visible on the camera without my big fingers in the way. Yeah, you can see it there. And you want to just carefully wipe over these rails. And you want to do that with all of the rails. So the ones on this side, the ones over here, and like I said, for the ones over here, you'll need to move this assembly and make sure to touch it here and not on the contacts. And you need to also re-grease all this. Well, first of all, clean all this. You can kind of see how the gist of this works. You just got to scrub down those rails. So I'll come back once I've done this job, because you're really only going to see my hands instead of the actual work. I just hope that you can kind of see this. And you can already see all the old dirty grease coming off here. Now here's a little side note, and you can probably hear the music playing right now, but what you want to do is you really want to clean these rails up and scrub them up until your Q-tip comes off clean. So right now, this has been after a while of scrubbing, but it's still coming off dirty. So we got to continue cleaning. I'm going to try to show you this like this here, but what you also have to do is you see the rail right here. Here's your Q-tip soaked in IPA, and you have to put your Q-tip into the rail as well and kind of scrub like this for a little while, because in there's also grease that will also get dirty and harden up. So you have to do that like all the way into there, around here, just to make sure to get rid of all the old grease. Where is it? Not that much, but there's some there as well that you got to clean off. So once again we are back to a not so fantastic angle, but I hope that you can still kind of see the rail there. So now we come to the part, if you cleaned everything up and your Q-tips are not longer coming back dirty at you, you take your grease and make sure to not put on a lot. Just put on a little bit like this. You can even see it if the camera even focuses on it. Just a little bit, and now you want to carefully put it onto the rails. On top of the rails, just carefully apply it. And then you want to also spread it. So you don't want to have, say, a big blob of grease somewhere and then no grease somewhere else. You want to slowly and surely spread the grease all across the rails. Here and here. And also make sure to, at the end, when your Q-tip is just kind of soaked with, oh, there's still some dirt coming off there. When your Q-tip is still completely soaked in grease, also go through the channels again. I'll show you that once we're there. So I've now re-greased the rails themselves, and while doing so, of course, make sure not to put grease on anything else other than the rails. And now we have this kind of just soaked in grease looking Q-tip. And then you just put on like a tiny dab more grease. And now we're going to do the same thing as I showed you earlier with cleaning. Just put it into the rails to also add some grease to the inside of the rails. And do this with all the rails once again. Now once you've done that, you are essentially done with re-greasing. Now you can kind of see the nice sparkly new grease on the rails there. And of course I've done this with all the rails, so around here and of course this rail here as well. And that's looking pretty good, I would say. Now there is an important step that you need to do after you re-greased everything. Just to be sure, even if you don't pay attention, your Q-tip with the grease may go onto your head drum. So you see the little heads there, the little dots there. Make sure to never, ever, ever touch those with your Q-tip. However, you can clean the head drum itself with the Q-tip soaked in IPA. So you just hold it on and twist it to clean. Like I said, just make sure that you never ever get the Q-tip in touch with the heads themselves, and I probably just did that there because I didn't pay attention. But make sure to not do that, but clean the head drum itself, because even if you were careful, you might have gotten some grease onto the head drum, and if you do that, the head drum will just absolutely chew up your tape, and the head drum will lock up, and in worst case, the head drum after that is completely damaged permanently. So, you can see there's some stuff coming off here. Just do this for, I don't know, a minute. Okay, so we're back to one of the previous kind of terrible camera angles, but we have now finished looping the mechanism. And this is all that you need to do when you have a JVC GR-C1 that either only loads some tapes or doesn't load tapes at all. This should now be fixed. However, we are already inside of the camcorder. Most of these have probably not been cleaned since they were made, or maybe only once in the 80s. So I highly recommend cleaning the tape mechanism. And this is the same as in any other full-size VCR. There's many YouTube videos about that, but it's just smaller in here. You gotta clean the erase head, the tension guide, the two loading guides, the audio and erase head, the pinch roller, which is kind of hidden back here, and the head drum. Like I said, this is done like in any other VCR. So I'm gonna do this and I'll meet you back at the reassembly. So here we are, a little while later. I've since cleaned out the mechanism, cleaned out the mechanical parts, and verified that the camera is still operable, which it is. It still works fine. So now it's time to put it back together. Now some people say, oh, assembly is the reverse of disassembly. I'm still going to show you how this camcorder gets reassembled. So first of all, I mean, it is kind of just the reverse of disassembly, but here's your tape door. Now what I'm going to do with this tape door is I'm just going to add some cleaning stuff here to a microfiber cloth and just kind of clean inside the door so that's nice and clean. Just clean all this stuff up. Lots of people don't really clean their stuff. I think it's kind of like, you know, there's like 40 years of grime on here. Just wipe it down. When the camcorder is back together, I'm going to wipe down the entire thing. But like I said, for now I'm just trying to get it back together. So I'm going to demonstrate how this works here. Is you have a hole here, which you can see right there, hopefully. A hole there and another hole right here. And there's two little pins right here. Let me try and zoom into that at least a little bit. And you essentially just have to line those, so you kind of hook it on like this. You line those two pins and the two holes up. It takes a little while. Here you gotta do it well. And there you go. Now it's in place. Now you push it down like this, and your screw holes align again. So we go to our ice cube tray, and we now do it the reverse order of how we did it when we assembled the thing or disassembled the thing. And now we have to, for example, put the screw back right here and screw it in. Don't over tighten it. Make sure to put it nice and tight, but don't over tighten it, because I feel like then you'll just shred up the threads in the screw area. So now you turn it around to the other side. There's the screw hole. And now we're going to do the same thing. Just screw it back in. And there you go. Now we put this down. And now we come to what's probably the most annoying part about this camcorder, and this is why on one of mine the microphone cable is mangled up. It's the assembly. Because you have to make sure everything is just in the right position. So if you look here we have a shit ton of wires, and all these wires need to neatly fit into this little hole right here where the viewfinder connector is. And you really got to make sure that every single one of these wires lines up perfectly. Now this is not too bad because we haven't taken the camcorder apart any deeper than this, but on my ITT in order to get to the to what was actually causing issue in that camcorder, you had to take apart the whole camcorder. So now we kind of have to see, line everything up. And once again, be very, very careful with what you do. Just kind of make sure nothing is catching anywhere. And just put it back down. And this is really just kind of annoying to do. Like I said, make sure that none of the wires are binding up, that everything is lining up properly. For example, another iris lock plate here is not lining up because there's some cables that you gotta tuck under the iris lock plate. It's just kind of annoying. And this is where I would say, I really like this camcorder, but that's just not a good design with all those wires just like that. They should have made it one designed cable, or maybe 2 or 3 cables, but not like so many of them. You kind of see now it's not really lining up here. It's again kind of the iris lock plate here is not working. Make sure it's lining up here, and there you go. Now we still have some issue here. Something up here isn't quite aligning. See here? It's probably one of the cables. I have to figure that out. I'm not gonna get you through all this process, but essentially you just gotta put these 2 clamshells back together. Okay, I got this up here back together. So now, the first step is put this little thing back in place. So, just kind of gotta line it here. It's got those tabs. You gotta line those tabs with the hose, and then slide it back. Latches in. There you go. So now you just gotta put all of the screws back where they belong. So we ended with putting in the iris lock screw. So we're putting that in again. And here's one thing I recommend. A lot of these screws go into plastic. So don't just instantly screw them in. Don't instantly turn clockwise. Turn counterclockwise, and you can kind of hear a click. And then screw it back in. This way you're going back into the old threads that were previously into the plastic. Because this is a self-tapping screw, it will always try and drill new grooves and new thread into the plastic. So if you do that 2-3 times, the plastic is completely worn out and the screw will not hold in anymore. This has happened to me on some stuff before, an old telephone that just would not hold together anymore. The top half and the bottom half was just like you'd pick up the telephone and the bottom half of the telephone would just remain on your table or whatever. That was pretty silly. I ended up doing something a little well, unorthodox, and just used some glue and glued the telephone back together. It still works though, so yeah, that wasn't that great. So just make sure you do that. Put the screws in the back in. Now the next screws are on the bottom, here and here. These screw into metal. These are not self-tapping, so in theory you can just turn these directly in, but I still prefer turning it counterclockwise until I can hear the click, because then you just know you're screwing it back into the grooves that were originally there, which is, at the end of the day, just, you know, much better than whisking to ruin your threads and then your screws won't hold anymore. It's just a pain in the butt, really. Okay. And then the last screw goes in up here, well, the second last. It goes in here by the viewfinder. And then this one I already put in previously in an attempt to actually make it stay together. So now the only thing we have to do again is get the shoe back in, which you can just put in whatever way you want. It doesn't matter how you put it in, other than, you know, make the holes line up. And then you can put your screw in. There's the click. And screw it back in. And this you do with all the screws. I'll do in real time here once again. Can't really see it that well. Hope you can at least imagine what I'm doing here. And then, last but not least, well, that's an issue. You gotta keep your desk organized. We gotta put the spring back in up here. Where did I put that? Oh, right here. So, then what you want to do with this, with the spring again, is make sure you put it in this way first. You can just slide it in, and it will just click in place, and there you go. Now we're just gonna get the handle again, which we put on like this. And yes, it does get, let me zoom out a bit, it does get put on like this, with the handle towards the front, because this is where your strap would attach, and your strap would attach here, and down here. So that's how it's meant to go. I know some people are like, oh, you gotta put it this way. No, you gotta put it this way. That's how it's meant to go from the factory. Plus, this way, your center of balance is just right in the middle of the camera. So that's just a lot better. So install the handle, which just makes it easier to work with. Now we've got to install the viewfinder again. I always plug in the cable first, and then I put in the viewfinder. Push here, line it up, clicks in place, and then last but not least, here we have the microphone. So I gotta put in like this, and there you go. Let me get a battery. Put this on the back of the camcorder. No, it's not making a good connection right now. It's sometimes the issue with these aftermarket batteries. They're a little bit more loose than the factory ones, and it's not making good contact right now. So I'll just plug it back into the power supply and use a different battery when I actually intend to take this outside. So let's plug in the power supply. There we have power now. Turn it on. And it looks like we put this on the wrong way, because you can see it's getting stuck. So I gotta actually investigate what I put on wrong here. I'll be right back. So remember how I told you not to over tighten the screws on the door? You really cannot make them too tight, or else this will actually get stuck. But yeah, we can put a tape in it now. And there you go. So hopefully this either fixed your GR-C1, or at least this video was helpful to you. I don't really make videos like this a lot where I walk through fixing stuff, and I feel like this video could have been like a lot better quality. But this was my second attempt ever making a video where I walk through and fix a device. So like I said, I hope this was of help, even though it might have not been a perfect video. Though I will add a disclaimer now at the end of the video. If you tried fixing your camera with this tutorial and it didn't work, it's not my fault. Please follow this tutorial at your own risk. I'm not liable for any damages. Just putting that out there in case somebody is like, oh, my camera broke, what do I do now? It's your fault. Yeah, but as you can see, this worked fine here. And yeah, this camera is going to get cleaned up, and I'm actually giving this to a friend of mine who really wanted one of these after seeing mine. And hopefully this will get some nice use in the Netherlands. So yeah, thank you for watching, and well, I hope to see you soon in another video of mine.